What is up, guys? Editing Cody here. Just wanted to let you guys know that there will be timestamps down below for the interview. We will have the amps playthrough and we will have the jams. There will be timestamps down below just in case you want to skip through, but why would you want to skip through a totally awesome video? Sit back, enjoy, and let's go. Yo, what is going on, guys? We got a very special guest today on the channel. You can see by the shirt, Death Cap Amplification. We got Mike here. Mike, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me on, Cody. I'm a big fan of your channel. I've been watching it since you started it, and you're like totally down to earth, and I love the content. You know, talk about songwriting process and all that.
Appreciate
so,
that.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I just love it. So thanks for having me on. Yeah, Cody and I have been friends for couple years now. He built, or I built this amp for him that he bought, and he's had that on his channel. But yeah, I'm just into building amps and stuff, and I figured I got something new to show today, so we're gonna get into that in a little bit. But yeah.
Let me ask you, man, what got you into building amps?
Dude, probably like midlife crisis, man. I'm a software IT developer by trade, and like I've been playing guitar since I was 12, and I'd say probably like 8 to 10 years ago, I got really into tone chasing, you know, and I just wanted to see what does this amp sound like compared to that one, and what do these pickups sound like in this guitar, and how do I get different tones, and that led me down a path of watching these videos about like how could I bias my amp, you know, or repair something or make an easy mod to something, and then just down that rabbit hole I just wanted to create and build.
Man, I've gotten into that rabbit hole too, but you've taken it to a whole nother level. I've made a video on the channel before, guys, where this one right here is an old 1950s tube radio that he made into a modded JCM 800. Thing is super sick. He makes super great stuff, and you know, honestly, this new amp that he's got right here is based off of the
Sunn Model T.
The thing is super sweet. We were testing everything out before we got the video started, and I gotta say it's gonna be super enjoyable for you guys to listen to. Alright, well, you got into building these amps and stuff. How did you go about learning?
Dude, pretty much self-taught. Like I said, I got into like kind of fixing my own amps, and like I wanted to learn how to bias them. I was taking them to the best shop, I think, in Baltimore, where we're from. Big Crunch, good friends of mine, Brooks and Shauna, that run the shop, and I had been taking my amps there, and I always wanted to know what are they doing to my amp behind the scenes? Like, what are they actually, when I get it serviced or fixed?
I still don't know.
So I started watching videos, and I got really into a channel called D-Lab Electronics. Terry Dayton is from Michigan.
Shout out.
And he's definitely like old school. I think he has the best ethics on the circuit creation and safety protocols for working on them. And I got hooked. I started watching all his earlier videos. Super inspired by that dude.
First time I met this guy, I go to his house and he says, "Hey, you want to try an amp that's 1 watt and also made from cardboard?" He made an amp that was a pedal, but it was also an amp that was in a piece of cardboard. I mean, the guy's a genius. And he builds great quality stuff. He takes his time. This is literally all hand-built stuff. I know that you used to be under Black Cat Amplification, and you made a name change. I know a little bit about it, but if you want to tell everybody the whole story behind that, I'm just going to get into that.
Sure. Now I'm Death Cap Amplification. I'm really a hobbyist. It's not a full-blown company. I don't have employees. It's just me. I really got into this hobby, got super passionate about it, and I named it Black Cat Amplification after my 2 black cats that I rescued. Loki and Layla were my 2 black cats, but yeah, they really, you know, are a big part of my life, and I thought, let me name it that. And then I got contacted by an amp company who I wasn't really familiar with, and that was Bad Cat, and some of you may know Bad Cat. And their lawyers started sending me documentation, cease and desist letters. Hey man, you're infringing on our trademark. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word, trademark. So Bad Cat had a trademark for Bad Cat, and I said, well, wait a minute. Once I started receiving all this legal stuff, I was like, first of all, I'm not really a company. I'm just a hobbyist. I'm a dude making amps out of an 8x10 bedroom in a townhouse, you know, like just for fun, like, you know, and yeah, sure, I sell them, but I don't hardly make anything on them. I'm not upscaling and selling dozens and thousands of them. You know, it's really just for fun. And they said, yeah, your name's too much like ours, and you're copying on what we're doing and all that. I'm like, I don't even know who you guys are. I don't think they're obviously as big as a Marshall or a Fender.
No.
But anyway, they just didn't like my name. And they did have a trademark, so I had to hire a trademark lawyer. That's super expensive.
Yeah.
Trademark lawyers are like some of the most expensive lawyers. And they basically gave me the advice like, look, you could go to court, you could fight, you could possibly win. But, you know, is it worth your time and your money and the court costs and the legal fees to do all that to keep this name? And I was like, hell no. I'd rather be spending my time and money on building amps.
Yeah.
So
the whole reason this is going on. It's ridiculous. So
I just felt like, you know, I was being bullied by this bigger company selling stuff. And, you know, I said, screw it. I'll change the name. And I came up with Death Cap because if some of you are gearheads and know what a Death Cap is, it's basically a nickname for a component that was inside of the old school amps that had the 2-prong plugs, right?
Yeah.
So they didn't have a grounded plug, so they'd put a little capacitor or a cap in the amp and shunt it to ground. And basically, if that cap happened to fail, then your whole entire chassis becomes electrified, and if you touch something, your guitar strings, whatever, you could get shocked. I mean, big time.
Crazy, dude.
So
Talk about actual rock and roll. Like, that's like straight up rock and roll.
Yeah,
right
and people back in the 60s and 70s, rock and rollers, they'd get shocked all the time because the units weren't grounded, and they would sing it to a microphone that was plugged in, so the ground would go through their bodies. Like, I've gotten shocked on the lips before playing, like, when I was a kid, playing, like, my friend's dad's old Sunn amp in the basement, you know. And, but yeah, so they called it the Death Cap, and nowadays the Death Cap is a bad thing. So you take them out of the old amps, you install a 3-prong grounded cord to make it safe again.
Right.
And, so, yeah, I just thought it was a cool name. Nobody had it. I researched the hell out of it to make sure nobody's got this name. And I knew I couldn't use the word cat because it would have been too similar to something else. So I went with that, and turns out I got some really cool logos by some great friends, and that shirt was designed by Alex Fine and my best friend Aaron Martinek, who did the logo. I don't have the shirt on right now, but he did this logo and he did the circular logo, and I was like, let's rebrand, let's just do this thing. It's a hobby, it's not a full-blown business, but I still want to have my name on the stuff that I do. So
yeah, I know that you do a lot of like repurposing, like with the 50s radio that you made into the JCM 800, but with these ones, these are handmade, right? Like, you did everything.
Everything from scratch. The only thing I didn't build myself was the wooden head cases, which I had a friend, another shout out to Gordon of Gordon's Garage. We'll put some links on here on your video.
Yeah.
But Gordon's a great friend of mine. He lives in Haverty Grace, Maryland. He is helping me to do this. I have equipment at my house, and I have built head cases before, but I needed 5 of them. I wanted to make 5 of these amps, and this guy can knock them out for me really quick. Yeah. Everything else is, I Tolex them all myself, and built the chassis, drilled them out by hand, and there's really no big machining or anything. I just do them from scratch. So.
That's so awesome.
But yeah, like that one, that's an old 50s ham radio that people would use to communicate, like a CB type of radio. And I've repurposed tons of cathedral radio style radios, tabletop radios, even televisions, like old 1940s TVs. I've got 2 right now.
I was going to say, I think you're working on one right now.
Yeah, I've got one in the works. That it's I'm putting a real like Android tablet in there to use as a screen.
Oh my gosh.
And I want to. It's got enough room for about a 12-inch speaker, so I want to do it like a combo amp. But the thing looks so sick, man. I just don't know what kind of amp I'm going to build yet. I'm hoping somebody will reach out to me and go, "Hey, man, could you do like a Fender whatever bass such and such?" And I'll be like, "Yeah, dude, that'll fit perfect."
The best thing is that some of the amps are niche, but they're also functional. Like, I know you did that one that was, I think it was the Fender clone that you did. It was smaller with the 6-inch speaker, but it also was Bluetooth compatible with your phone, so you could also just play music or practice stuff through it. And
I've done that a few times.
Cool.
I started getting into that because I love antiques. I love collecting old radios, and I found that the radio circuits are almost identical to amp circuits, with the biggest thing is, it can receive radio signals, but you're really just amplifying it with a preamp stage, a power amp stage, an output transformer, a speaker. So those circuits are very similar. And I started like fixing them up, and then I started keeping my eye out when we would go out looking for like antique stuff, or even on eBay for like empty shells of radios, because I don't want to destroy a really good possibly
Right.
fixable, or repurposable radio.
It's mainly for the shell.
Yeah, I'm like, hey man, it's a
Yeah.
cool looking piece,
Right.
and if I could just build an amp in there, then somebody could have something that looks really cool. And I've had a lot of customers, like people reach out to me. Matter of fact, one person that like it shocked me to my core, who reached out to me through a friend of mine, was Jerry Leonard, and he used to play guitar for David Bowie, and now he plays for Suzanne Vega,
That's so
and he
cool.
does his own projects as well.
Yeah.
Dude's an amazing guitarist, originally from Ireland, and he's using some of my amps that I
Yeah.
built him on stage, and these cool little cathedral
That's so
style
cool.
radios, man.
Yeah.
And it's just awesome to see people loving
Enjoying
that,
and-
repurposing something old that's never
Yeah.
going to get used. It'll probably be thrown in a basement or
Yeah.
whatever for years and years.
Antique shop sitting on the shelf, dusting up.
Yeah,
Stuff like
yeah,
that.
Yeah, I think it's fun. Those builds are the most challenging because everyone is different. They have a different amount of space inside of them.
Yeah.
Some of them I only have room for like 2 knobs.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, what amp could I do? I could do a Fender Champ in that, right?
Right.
Or like if it has 4 knobs, okay, I could probably get away with like a Vibro Champ or like a Vibro Lux type of amp.
Yeah.
So it depends on how much space, and I like that challenge because I can't just build anything in a piece,
Right.
And I've had some where I've bought the radios and I'm just like, I just can't figure anything else that's going to fit in this thing.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I'll sell those or give them away
Well,
to
you
somebody.
see that with other amps as well. I mean, so when I first got that 5150 block letter, which is actually how I met Mike, when I first got it, I was not expecting it to be as wide as they are. Like, they're huge and, multi-channel, and, I mean, obviously you know more about this, but sometimes it's insane to look at these amps and see just how much room is needed to run
Yeah.
all of these different components in it.
Yeah,
And,
and actually that's a great point because that amp and a lot of more modern amps
Yeah.
are circuit board based. They're built with circuit boards, and that's really because one, you can reproduce circuit boards in a factory and do it quicker, but also you can cram a lot more in a smaller space.
Yeah.
The only thing I don't like personally about circuit boards, and it's not to say that I'll never build an amp that has circuit boards.
I've been trying to talk him into trying it. I've been trying to talk him into it.
Yeah, I've been trying to learn some stuff and all that, but something about the hand-wired, the turret board configuration is my favorite, which that's
Yeah.
what these are. But I like eyelet board, the old Fender eyelet boards, because you can see every component, you can see where it's wired to,
Right.
you can swap stuff out super easy. The only thing about the modern amps with the circuit boards, a lot of them, especially like Mesa Boogie,
Yeah.
for example, they cram so much. I mean, it's amazing
Yeah.
engineering, but to fix something is a nightmare because you got to disassemble everything to get to one little part.
Yeah.
And that might not even be the part that's broken,
Yeah.
that you have to fix. So it can take you like 90% of your time just taking it apart, labeling stuff to make sure you put it back right.
Yeah.
Like
And everything is so small within the amps too. It could just be one tiny little solder joint that's came loose or burnt out or something, and now your job is to look for it and freaking find it.
It's
a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it's harder, but I mean, I've fixed a lot of circuit board amps, and there's pluses and minuses to both ways.
Right.
And, hey, man, if they sound good, low noise, all that kind of stuff, built well.
Well, that's also another good point to go to is these amps. I'm pretty sure the transformers that are in these amps, they're the Canadian transformers. Is it the same ones as you had put in this radio here?
Yeah, actually, I think so.
The components.
Yeah, I like
different,
to use I use Hammond transformers a lot, not exclusively, but Hammond. I have had the best sound and the best luck with Hammond. They're also very attainable. Throughout COVID, I had a hard time getting transformers. It was super hard, man, because a lot of companies. One company went out of business, Classic Tone. That was out of Chicago, Illinois, I believe.
Yeah.
They went out of business right before COVID, I think.
Yeah.
So you had one supplier that wasn't even there, and then getting overseas stuff, like certain things
I'm sure
in Europe.
that was ridiculous.
I've had to do that. Yeah, I've actually had to do that for some of the Soldano clones I've built.
Yeah.
Getting some transformers from like Germany and stuff. More expensive, but I wanted the perfect specs. I wanted it to be what it really was to the voltage levels. But yeah, so I mean, the Hammonds work great, and I've got them in here.
They work great for me. I don't know anything about them, but I know that they sound good and they work great for
some
me.
people
man.
will be like, Mercury Magnetics, they're 3 times as much. Yeah, they're awesome transformers too, but it might not be practical. Like, I really don't feel like the the cost to pay double or triple
Right.
the amount is really that much of an audible difference.
Yeah.
To some people, maybe in some circuits, and I totally respect that. If somebody wanted Mercury's and wanted to pay for it, I'd totally build it with Mercury's.
I feel like the distinguished differences that you're going to notice within something like that, if you're playing metal and you're distorting your stuff anyways, are you really going to be able to tell after you're clipping the shit out of your signal?
And I've seen videos, and it's very hard to do a compare video of an amp with one set of transformers and another set, like, because you literally have to use the same exact amp with the same circuit, the same tubes, because even there's variations between tubes, right?
Yeah.
One tube may sound a little bit different than the other, even if they're the same brand,
right.
you know? So if you want to do a real comparison, you literally got to take the amp apart, put another transformer. But I've seen it done, and I'm like, okay, I can hear a difference slightly,
Right.
but is it really that much that I really care? You know, maybe if it was a really bad transformer that didn't sound good, but honestly, the comparisons I've seen personally, I think they all sound great. You know, maybe one's a tiny bit brighter than the other, but all right, hit the treble up a little bit.
That's what the EQ's for, people.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, that's so cool, man. But so you said that this is based off of the Sunn Model T, I mean, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would be the differences between this and
a
an
real
actual
one? Yeah.
Model T?
So the Sunn Model T, a lot of people know it as the elusive holy grail of doom amps.
Death metal as well.
Death metal, it's different genres have used that. But you know, a lot of people realize like finding a Sunn Model T nowadays is extremely hard, and if you find one, you're probably not even going to find one under $5,000, at least $5 or $6,000. It's just because of the rarity. You know, everybody bought them up, and you know they're hard to get, right?
You're sitting on them.
And there's definitely something special about these amps. I've built not just this, which we're going to talk about, which is a low watt version of it, and also a standalone preamp, but also I built a 60 watt version, which the originals use 4 6550 tubes at about 150 watts. These things are tanks.
Yeah.
I mean, to carry one around is got to be 70, 80
ridiculous.
pounds at least.
I mean, my God, the triple rectifier is 150 watts.
It's probably just as heavy, if not heavier.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
You know, the iron transformers are like this big to be able to power those 6550s. And while that's great and all, a lot of people nowadays, they want to scale down. It's like, do I need that much? I'm going to go to a show, and the sound guy's not going to let me turn it up past 3, and I'm going to say, fuck you, and I'm going to put it on 5, right, anyway, but I can't go past 5, right, or whatever that limit is, just because 150, you won't even be able to hear my drummer. But yeah, so now, it's a cool circuit. I built multiple versions of it. I really wanted to see what makes it tick, because I've never owned an original. I do own the reissue that Fender did. It's a completely different amp.
Is that what that is at your place?
Yeah.
Okay.
In the 90s, Fender bought Sunn, and they reissued the Sunn Model T through Fender's factory, basically. And what I heard they did was Channel 1 was supposed to be basically a clone of the original, which isn't a super high gain amp, but it's a fuzzy, gainy sort of amp with like a very, very loud sound, right? Especially the clean is loud. Channel 2 is like a high gain channel where they added more tubes in the preamp to give it a lot more gain. It's a cool amp. It's a really cool amp, but honestly, I don't think either Channel 1 or Channel 2 sounds like a real Sunn Model T.
Right.
And while I haven't owned a real one, building them and playing them, they all sound the same to me.
Right.
The 60, 70, 80 watt version, which is 2 of the 6550 tubes, not all 4. That's what I'm using now with my band Born of Plagues.
Yep.
I use that now as my main amp, and it is plenty loud enough for a doom band like that. And it's probably just a little bigger than this. I try to make them as small as possible.
Yeah, I love the small form factor. It's super cool.
Yeah,
man.
so I basically came up with the idea after building many versions of this. I wanted something like maximum flexibility. Like, I want small, but I want powerful, and I want to be able to like scale it up if you need to, right? And what that means is you can run this as a 10 watt amp. It has 2 6v6 power tubes in it, which will give you about 10-12 watts, but 2 6v6s together. It's also, like the Sunn Model T itself is an ultra linear amp, which means it has a special kind of output transformer with high voltage taps that go to another part of the tubes, to the grids of the tubes. And it makes it ultra linear, which is different from most other amps, and that's the way Sunn did it. And it gives the power section, the power tubes, like ultimate clean headroom.
Right.
A lot of people, there's a misconception with Sunn Model Ts, and people are going to argue this, I'm sure, like Sunn Model T,
But that's why they're good pedal platforms too.
Yeah.
Right? Because they have all that extra headroom.
It's in the power section though. So really, the amp itself, the preamp, is really what makes the character of the Sunn Model T. That's what I'm going to say. After building many of these and having the preamp be exactly the same in every single amp, the only difference is the power sections from the 6550 tubes to EL84s to the 6v6s, all that. I've built lots of them. They all have the same character, and that comes from the preamp section, the way they designed the preamp. The power section is very clean. You can turn this amp up to like 8 before the power tubes actually start to break up, and that's due to the ultra-linear transformers. Most Marshall amps, like a lot of the old school like rock Marshalls, you get it up to 4 or 5. That's when the power tube gain starts to kick in.
That's what I noticed.
With these, you really got to get it up to like 8 or 9 before the power tube gain kicks in. But the preamp gain starts to come in at like 2 or 3. So like the character of a Sunn Model T, in my opinion, and experience with building these things is in the preamp. Like they're adding values in the preamp that are totally different from Marshall, different from Fender, different from Soldano, Orange. They're actually maxing out some of the gain sort of stuff in the preamp tubes to give it that fuzzy sort of character. And we'll listen to that totally clean, without pedals for a second. Because that, to me, is what makes it a great pedal platform. Not like most people think pedal platforms, it just needs to be an ultra loud, clean, no gain amp. That can work as a pedal platform, but you're really only going to hear the sound of the pedals. You're not going to hear the sound of the pedals with the amp. And that's what I think this gives you, is the Sunn Model T preamp gain structure, that fuzzy gain. You add that to your pedals, and that's where the magic comes.
Well, and that's what us guitarists love about having so many different amps and so many different pedals. Each and every single one does something different to every single. And you got all your knobs, your EQ sections, and you change the volume, it changes. I mean, there's so many different options and things to do. And speaking of which, I mean, why don't we go ahead and show the people?
Absolutely. And so we're going to show the amp part of it, right? So that's the 2 6V tubes. And also, the scalability factor is that you can run this as a preamp unit standalone. Like, completely not even need to have a speaker cable hooked up. What I did was I designed a mode switch in the back, which will show you can switch it to preamp mode. And you don't need to plug in a speaker cabinet. You can plug it into another amp's effects return and use that amp's power section, which will do that here. And also, you could plug it into a sound system, a PA. You could plug it into a power amp, a solid state power amp, power. So that way, you can plug it into anything with more power and like have that Sunn Model T, signature sound with a whole different, however many watt unit you have. So that's what I had in mind. I was like, I want to give people the Sunn Model T. I want to allow them to use that without having to spend $5-6 grand.
So it's a Sunn Model T that gives you the option to scale up, but also has what I would consider a more modern feature to it. So it is appealing to the modern guitarist.
Hopefully, it's appealing to me. And
I personally, I think it's awesome. The fact that you can plug this into another power amp, and use it for a louder effect. I mean, that's fucking awesome.
Or or just go line out straight into your recording stuff and use IRs.
That's so fucking cool.
And that's what I've been doing at home, like a lot of times.
I love that, man.
Let's play it.
Let's get into it, man.
Let's go.
Let's go. fucking love it, man.
Yeah.
So is that the tone that you prefer to have with this amp?
Yeah, that's pretty much my tone. I'm using a the amp is set. Here it is, clean. Basically, you heard with the guitar volume all the way up. It's pretty fuzzy. So you have that. Pretty much both preamps close to noon. Everything else is pretty, just a variation of noon. But I use an Acapulco fuzz clone Acapulco Gold clone fuzz it's a one knob fuzz. It's just very dirty. But you can tell it's kind of got that stonery sound when I use it, and I like to tighten up my sound a little bit just with the band I'm in. It's a sludge band, and my personal sound is to hear every single note.
Yeah.
And of course I have a big thrash background of playing, so
yeah.
I want to hear my shit, and I want it to sound very clear, but also be dirty and sludgy at the same time. So
yeah.
I add a Ibanez tube screamer right before the fuzz, but I have the knobs almost all the way down just to thin out the sound. Yeah. So here's the sound with the amp. With the tube screamer, it thins it. And then add the fuzz, and it really gets it. Without that tube screamer, it sounds good, but the fuzz is very overpowering,
Yeah.
So
typical fuzz, super compressed.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how the Ibanez, the tube screamer, kind of takes that compression away. I never really thought about it.
It's so weird because on its own, the Ibanez set like this sounds awful. It's very.
Yeah.
Just without it. That's the amp. It's like thick and ballsy. With the tube screamer, it almost sounds like it's in another room. But it's enough that it makes the fuzz, it just works with the fuzz.
Well, let me ask you this. With this amp, what would you recommend? I'm a big thrash guy myself.
Yeah.
You know this. What would you recommend doing pedal to amp to get that sort of thrashy sound going?
First of all, the guitar. This is a very low tune guitar. It's down to B standard, which is what I'm using with my current band. But for the thrashy stuff, obviously a different guitar. But I would really, honestly, I like the amp's fuzz combined with like a tight sort of boost pedal. So my go-to has always been the Klon, and you introduced me actually from one of your videos, the Horizon devices. Dude,
such a great pedal.
That pedal sounds so good with this. I'd actually like to hear you play that with one of your guitars, and we can dial in a thrash sound.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
I could do it with this guitar, but again, tuned so low, it's not going to give you that crispness.
Sound,
but it's still, you can get some cool sounds. Let's hear what it sounds like, actually. So this is the Horizon Devices boost pedal. Now I'd have to adjust a couple things, so what I'd probably do is bring in a little bit of highs. But again, this guitar, the way it's set up and tuned, we can get some pretty good thrash stuff, I think, with another guitar.
Yeah, awesome.
And the other thing is that I have this Tame and Fierce switch on here. So the Fierce is the stock Model T setting. If I put it on Tame, it takes away a lot of that low end. And I'm actually using values that are closer to like a Soldano type of a sound or a Marshall sound in the preamp in that case. So it really takes away that really thick Sunn sound. And And that works really well sometimes with, you know, the right kind of fuzz and the boost pedals.
Right.
So this clon boost with that, I need to add in I'm adding a little more volume from the normal channel, which is not the really high tinty channel. A little more bass, bring some high. Alright, so what we're going to do, Cody's got his Charvel here, and I've got all the knobs just at noon right now, just everything straight up and down. And he'll just start playing, and I'll see if I can dial in a thrash tone that I think would sound cool with this, just by tweaking the knobs a little bit, and then we're going to add this. Let's start out with the Horizon devices. Dude, that sounds great.
That does
I love
sound
your
really
style,
good.
man. I
Thanks,
love
I
the way you
appreciate it,
play.
man.
Let's try the Clon boost, just see what we can get out of that.
Alright.
Same settings on the
I can't say I've ever used a clon boost
with
to
thrash.
Yeah, the Klondike bar. The
Let's try it. I can get some really good thrash stuff. Do with different amps and
yeah.
got a little more tintiness on that one.
Yeah, it's got kind of like that brittle harshness that I feel like would cut through good on a mix with that.
On a mix, yeah. We can cut some of that back.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to play with the Tame and the Fierce and the Tame. So that was on Fierce. So
yeah.
With that guitar being tuned up higher, we don't hear the bottom end as much. And also, I noticed, like, are these vintage 30 speakers?
Yes, they're the England made vintage.
Yeah,
shades.
I have an older Mesa cab that's got the black shadows. It's a lot deeper of a sound. That's what my ears are kind of used to. So I noticed that like the bottom end sounds different on this, but it's tighter. So it actually could work good for thrash.
But yeah. So definitely can do the thrashy thing.
It can. I mean, and we just barely scratched the surface with pedals and boost stuff and all that. And settings. But let's try maybe one more thing. Let's try doing some clean, like semi-clean stuff, or I don't know, something. And I just have a little bit of reverb on. So it hit the tame setting on the preamp. So the Fierce is that. Here, play again. This is Fierce. So that's Sunn stock Model T sound. And Tame.
Kind of makes it more Fendery.
It does.
It almost has it like that Fender Tweedy type of sound.
And depending
to it.
on the guitar I use, I notice the same thing. I'm like, okay, I hear a little more Fender sound. But if I do it with a different guitar, I'm like, oh, that's Marshall-y sounding, right?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of the amps gives it their very signature sound is that these are all passively filtering out frequencies. from the original guitar sound. Like there's active, tone stacks and passive tone stacks. Most 90% probably or more of guitar amps are passive, so they're filtering stuff out. Even if you turn them up, you're like, oh, I get more bass, but you're really just filtering out highs kind of and adjusting that way. So another thing we didn't talk about, but another feature of this is there's one input on the amplifier, but then you see this out here, and the way Sunn did it was they actually had 5 jacks that you could plug into. You could plug it to the bright channel in or the normal channel in, plug to the bright channel out or the normal channel out, and then there was a both one in the middle. So I decided, how can I save room on this thing but still give you all of that same functionality, kind of, and what I did was one input with a 3-way switch, so you can do the bright channel only,
that's cool,
both in the middle, or normal, and that'll allow you to control the bright volume and the normal volume together when you have it on both. And then the out is just taking your dry guitar signal or dry from a pedal board, right? And you could plug it into another amp, right? So if you wanted to run 2 of these, or you wanted to run this and the orange amp behind me, you could just take that signal out. It's sort of like having your own ABY pedal, except they're both going to run at the same time, right? So that way, if you just wanted to run a dual amp rig and you didn't want to do it with a pedal, you say, all right, plug my guitar in here and go straight out to another amp and have its own sound.
Hell yeah.
So it's a cool idea. I don't think a lot of people use that feature, but I didn't need to have 5 input jacks.
But this almost makes it easier for you to use it, because it's just, hey, what? Oh, shoot, hey.
Exactly,
what? Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
it's so much easier.
Yeah, and they really do sound very different. The bright channel is a lot brighter, so if you play
it definitely is.
Play a chord on just the bright.
Yeah, it definitely thickens it up. And with clean tones, I'll admit I'm not the cleanest tone guy, and when I do, it's in an open tuning and I'm playing whiny emo stuff, so give me a break on that.
Okay, so if you want to run this as a preamp unit only, the nice thing about the way I built this is it has a mode switch, so you can say, I want to run this thing with speaker cabinets as an amplifier, which will use the 6v6 tubes, or I can switch it to preamp mode, and then I don't even need to have a speaker cabinet plugged in, but I have full access to the entire preamp section of this, and I can run it into a power amp, into a mixing board, into an interface, so that I could run different IRs of different cabinets. But today we're going to do it where we're going to use this little orange Dark Terror because it has an effects return on the back of it. So most amplifiers, I'm not going to guarantee that this will work with every amplifier, because they all design their effects loops slightly differently, right? So it does work with this because I use it at home a lot, and this is about 15 watts running 15 to 18 watts running 2 EL84 tubes. So when you plug it into the effects return of another guitar amp, you're completely bypassing that amplifier's preamp. So the preamp volume doesn't work, the shape control, the EQ controls don't work. You're sending your signal from the amp completely straight into the power amp section of that amp in general, depending on how they build it. And I've tried this with, I did it with a Soldano Slow 100 clone that I built, and it works really well with that. I have a Mesa Mark IV amp that I use, and that actually sounds really awesome because it has the graphic EQ sliders on it, and it actually will work with those, so I can fine tweak it. I've tried it in a couple other amps and it worked. It's just, there's going to be some amps out there that it's not going to work with. When you have it switched to amp mode and you have a speaker cabinet plugged in, you can still use the preamp side and also send it to a board. When you switch it to preamp mode, you can't use the speakers, right? The speakers, you can have a speaker plugged in, but you won't get sound out of it. The reason for that is I wanted to allow people to be able to, if they don't have a speaker cab, and you know amps are dangerous to run, you can ruin them and the output transformers and the tubes if you don't have a speaker plugged in. So I wanted you to be able to use this as like a studio recording unit where I don't even want to bring a cab into the room. You know, I just want to use this thing to record it with my own IRs. So that allows you to switch it to preamp, completely turn off the power tubes and then go straight out with a guitar cable. Remember, not a speaker cable, because you're not plugging it into a speaker. And it has its own level control, so that way if the signal is too much for whatever amp you're plugging it into, or your DAW or whatever, you can control how much signal goes to that. So let's turn this sucker on and use its power section. So now we have it on, everything's warmed up, and this level control, I'm adjusting it on the back of this one, which is the one we're playing right now. And as you hit your strings, you can hear the volume come up. That's full signal going into there, and it's not distorting actually on this one.
Yeah, which is pretty crazy.
So hit it one more time. Pretty loud. So I'm gonna cut it back a bit to about where we had the level for the amplifier. And yeah, we're using now the power section of the Dark Terror.
Yep.
But none of the EQ stuff, none of the preamp stuff is actually coming through. It's just the Sunn Model T preamp. So we have all the 3 tubes you see here are the preamp section. The 1 tube is actually a phase inverter, which really splits the signal to the 2 power tubes. So really, it's only just those first 2 tubes.
Nice.
And that's where all the EQ stuff lives with the Sunn Model T. That's where this Fierce switch, the only control that does not work is the presence control when you're running it as preamp. And the reason is presence and resonance on amplifiers are a product of the output section of the power tubes. It's part of the negative feedback loop. So in an amplifier, so this, if you turn this, it won't actually make any sound.
Okay.
But you can compensate by adding more treble in or more bass.
Right.
Right. And I wanted to not try to force it into the controls on the preamp. I want to leave the preamp as original and
hell yeah,
Sunn Model T-ish as possible, and not jimmy something in there. Yeah.
All right, hell yeah.
So
well, let's get some fucking thrash tones.
Let's thrash it, man. So we're gonna thrash through the orange's power amp section, but all Sunn preamp. Holy shit, man.
That's fucking loud.
God, you can play. Yeah, actually, we probably have to turn it down even more.
I love it.
Yeah, dude. I actually think there's a different character of crunch that comes through when you do it that way. I don't know. It sounds a little different to me. Like, just a tiny bit. Yeah. And it's probably the difference between maybe 6v6s and EL84s. I love both of those tubes. Yeah. I went with 6v6 because for Doom stuff, and with me just tinkering around with different power tubes, I found I really love that tone. It's a little tiny bit thicker. These might be a little bit more spicier for a thrashy sound.
I'm gonna go with old school thrash where they just scoop the shit out the mids.
Yeah, man, do it.
Scooped. We're scooped, baby. Oh, actually, yeah.
Let me get you a little more.
That, I don't know, maybe.
That sounds good. Did you notice I put the presence up? You got more mids, but different mids, right?
Yeah.
It's weird because you scooped this one a little bit, and then I boosted those upper ones.
I think that sounds really good.
That gave it some bite. Let's play that again, and I'll take the presence way down and just slowly bring it up.
That is thick as shit. Also, I'm in standard tuning and it sounds just like I'm in like drop Q or something.
In the room, there's like this balls that just came out. It was really cool. It was weird.
It was very cool. It was almost like you were tightening. It almost sounded to me like you were tightening up a fuzz or something.
Yeah.
It almost had that like compressed signal. Kind of like a fuzz, but almost like your tone, how you do it with your fuzz
and you got this little bit of extra something on top. It was like you were sprinkling it with
very clear, like it shows a lot of clarity. You can still hear every chord.
That's what I was saying about this Sunn. It's like everybody, you know, thinks, well, not everybody, but a lot of people think that it's just a Doom machine.
I always thought it was like a mud fest. I thought that they were just
kind of by themselves,
yeah.
Almost by themselves, if you really crank them and all that, but like there's so much more you could do with this circuit and have it sound great. Yeah. And it's just, to me, it's my favorite amp I've built to date, and I've built lots of different kinds, clones of everything, and it's like, it's my favorite that takes pedals because I can get the wildest like gain sounds that I can't get with the pedals alone, and I can't really get with other amps because sometimes it's too much. Hey, do you want to try that one you were talking about?
Oh, the Pepper's Dirty Tree.
Let's try that one.
Let's go. Let's see how it sounds with this, but with your drop B guitar or B standard guitar. With that thickness, it will clear it right up. Maybe not your exact tone that you would go for, but I'm telling you, it really tightens it up.
Yeah, I'd like to hear it. I hit the tame there for a second. Cut a little bit of that, but yeah, that's thick, dude.
Yeah, and this is with the low all the way up and the level all the way up. Yeah,
that's got some fuzzy. That's got some fuzzy. Let me try this.
And this is like the old TC Electronics.
Yeah, it reminds me of that, that sort of fuzzy, gainy sort of. Let's see it with this. That's what the Ibanez on too.
This is with the lows cut back, so kind of just throwing everything in the middle on the TC setting on the Pepper's Dirty Tree.
That's cool, man. Fierce on a second.
think that we can safely say that Mike is enjoying the Pepper's Dirty Tree.
I like that, man. I might have to get that, dude.
Yeah. Honestly, I'll be straight up with you. I've only ever used that pedal to tighten up a really thick amp, but now that I know that it is almost like fuzzy when it's on that TC Electronics setting, I might have some fun with that one. Yeah.
That is dope, man. Cool. It's weird because it went from this huge range of things.
Yeah.
Not being overly distorted, but I'd be very curious to combine it with different shit.
Yeah.
Like the fuzz, like how I use the Ibanez with the fuzz to thin it out, and you could do something like that with it.
But yeah, so what other features have you packed into this thing? We've talked about being able to plug in just to use it for a power section. We've talked about using it for a recording device, essentially.
Yeah, I think for the most part we've covered most of them. Again, just as a quick summary recap, we have one input, you have a bright and a normal channel volume, but you can set it to the middle setting, which is both. That way you can dial in how much sort of high gain you want, how much thicker, lower gain.
Yeah.
And then you have the tame and the fierce switch. So fierce is the stock Sunn setting. Tame is cutting down some of the lows, giving a little more clean headroom. The out will take it out to another amp or another device. Just your whatever signal's coming out of either your guitar or your pedal board. That'll take it out to another device. And then of course you have your standard Sunn EQ, you got bass, mid-range, treble, and presence, and your master volume, of course, for your 6v6 power tubes if you're running it as an amp. Again, you can switch it to preamp mode, and you don't need to have a speaker plugged in. There's notes on there in case if somebody gets this and they forget. I also have a 20-page user manual that has all kinds of stuff from the features, how you can run it, what cab combinations you can use, what devices you can plug it into. But yeah, you'll get that if you purchase one of these. I made 5 of these. I actually made a prototype for myself, which is this one. Came out so well and I loved it so much I was like, I gotta make more of these. It's the first time I've ever done that with an amp. I've always done one-offs and done things for people that requested stuff, but now I'm like, I know people are gonna love this and want that Sunn Model T sound in different format, so that's what I made. I've made 5 of them. One of them sold already since filming this video to a guy who had one of my other amps, and now I have 4. So this snakeskin is the only snakeskin I've ever done with this. The rest are all black, so you can buy the snakeskin one.
Mean, the Tolex job is amazing.
I've gotten better at that. I've really been working on that.
Something I don't know if we really discussed, or maybe I just didn't process it because I'm terrible at processing things, but how many watts is this thing?
I say it's a 10-watt amp, but I think it actually pushes
10
more.
Watts?
I think it pushes more. I think it pushes about... Well, we only really had this on 3 or 4.
That's what I'm saying. Damn.
It's pretty loud.
And it had so much headroom, too.
I mean, I would say probably... Maybe in reality, like 12 to 14.
We got a visitor.
Yes.
Literal black cat.
That's my bud.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. It's a lot of watts in a little package. It's pretty lightweight. It's probably like 5 pounds, if that.
Oh no, they weren't heavy. I mean, I was able to carry it with one hand, something else, and still be able to lift it up and get the door when you got here.
I wanted to sound big, but functionally be small.
Oh no problem, man.
I'll be back to do some more videos because we're both gear nuts, and we're gonna like light this channel up somehow and get some more gear on there and some more wacky stuff and just have fun.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Go subscribe to Mike. He's got all types of crazy, wacky, different amps and cool different things. I hope to have him back on the channel. I hope he wants to come back.
I'll come back when I get that TV one done. It's going to be a bitch to haul that thing here because it's probably about this tall. But that's going to be wild. I can't wait to finish that.
Oh, dude, that's going to be ridiculous. People are going to get distracted by thinking they're watching fucking cartoons on TV. But yeah, anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll check you later. Peace.
Later.